Hello, my name is Wildstag, and thank you for tuning in to another used book rant. Today I'm going to be covering this book, The Vagrant. The Vagrant I purchased used from Coas Books in Las Cruces, New Mexico. I don't know how much I paid for this one. The receipt is probably lying around somewhere. This is one of those books that had a sticker on it that I have since peeled off. This book is just over 400 pages long. It's a science fiction fantasy. It's like kind of a blending of science fiction and fantasy. It's a apocalyptic story where demons are intruding upon the mortal world and infecting humans with their taint, effectively. The titular Vagrant is a mute character that is on a mission to bring a sword to the empire that is being intruded upon by those demons. He is in the outskirts of that empire's control, where, for the most part, humanity is losing very slowly. People can't really retreat quickly enough, and so they kind of just resign to their small villages, their small towns. They try to resist the demons as best they can. But it's difficult to do that when you're just a single human, or just a human against an otherworldly powerful creature with powers you really cannot comprehend. So he is out there, and he is equipped with this sword, which is legendary. It is given to a champion of a goddess by that goddess. The champion turns out to have been a automaton-like creature, a golem made to defend this empire against external threats. In the prologue parts of this story, for context, this story jumps from present to past to present to past. It doesn't expose the prologue all at once. It takes its time with that. Before the story got started, there was a big battle. There was a rift where the demons started coming out. The big battle happens. All these knights with their great swords, these magical swords, are turning up to fight in this crusade. And additionally, one of these golems comes out to fight. She ends up losing, but her sword, her weapon, is secured by one of those knights. He tries to flee and ends up taking as squire two young men who he had previously promised they would do their best to push back the demons, but he is the only surviving knight out of all of the ones that went to that battlefield. He's dying. This knight is slowly dying, and he knows it, so he spends a year in a cave, hidden away, trying to train these two young men to the best of his ability to use their weapons and fight back against the demons. There are two young boys that are squires, and they eventually train until their master dies, but he is confident that they can at least get the sword to where it needs to be. He's not altogether confident in their skills, but they are confident in their skills. One of them, almost too confident. He wants to be the heroic, swashbuckling guy that, the knight, that fantasy ideal of a knight, that the knight gets the girl, he saves the town, he does everything. And not necessarily in that order, but probably in that order, and then, getting the girl after. The other character does not talk at all. He never has any voice lines, which indicates to the reader he is the Vagrant. He is not referred to by that name at all in the prologue sections, but he does behave the same way as the Vagrant. Now, both of these boys have a crush on the same village girl, but they save that village from some demons. Both of them stick around trying to woo the girl. The brash, swashbuckling character ends up sleeping with her, and she ends up pregnant with his child. And the Vagrant spends his time trying to protect and keep alive this toddler. And that toddler is the child of his friend and the girl that they both had a crush on. The Vagrant is driven by duty. and responsibility. He puts himself at risk for the mission. He does not care the risk, how risky it is. He will do everything in his power to secure the safety of the toddler and deliver the sword. And if that requires side adventures because someone expects a favor of him before they lend him their aid, he does that task. But he has a heart. He has a soft side. He still wants to be that sort of knight that saves people, that perfect ideal. And he tries. And he extends the mission to saving the innocents. It is a story about struggle, about running from danger. Every part of this book is the vagrant is a refugee. His friends are refugees. His allies, everything he is doing is running away from a greater threat, hoping that he gets there in time to save the people he cares about. It's not a grand story about someone defeating a dragon. It's not a grand story about the demons dying. That will come later, I think. This is the first book in a series. But in this book, all that matters is the delivery of that object. The vagrant has a character, but he does not necessarily grow or change. He doesn't have an arc because that character doesn't need to change. But he does his utmost to serve that mission. And I've said that repeatedly. It really does deserve repeating because that's part of the theming of the book, that devotion to responsibility, devotion to an ideal, that devotion to a cause. The Vagrant spends 400 pages doing that. It's not the tightest text, so I'll give an example. I'll open the page up. That's kind of the spacing in this book, the margins, the spacing. None of it is tightly packed. Everything is very open. But that doesn't matter to the content of the book itself. This book came out in 2015, and yeah, it's my first encounter with Peter Newman. I don't know if his other books are similar or how similarly these books cleave to that theming, but I liked The Vagrant just from the concept I've read in this book. The back cover is actually pretty good at summarizing the concept of the book very succinctly. It's only a few lines of summary on the back. It just says, "The vagrant is his name. He has no other. Friendless and alone he walks a desolate, war-torn landscape. His purpose is to reach the shining city and to deliver the only weapon that may make a difference in the war. But the shining city is far away and the world is a very dangerous place." I do want to add one more segment to this, and that is simply to say that in the acknowledgments section, the last page of the book, Peter Newman states, "I'm also delighted with the artist Jamie Jones for creating a cover that makes me smile every time I see it. There are others too, people I'd never even thought about before I started this process, who all contribute in vital ways but are rarely mentioned. Thank you all." So the artist Jamie Jones is responsible for that wonderful picture, a man carrying a sword over one shoulder, kind of, like this, arm to the side, with the baby in one hand swaddled. It's a very perfect image. It captures the spirit of this book perfectly. And that cover, when I saw it, pulled me into the book immediately. I picked it up off the shelf because I saw the spine of the book has that image, and I thought that's a cool image. I saw The Vagrant just as the name, very short, sweet, to the point. Once I saw the cover larger, and then the little praise at the top, a must-read, sci-fi now, I knew I needed it. I think anyone else is going to think the same. If you like science fiction, if you like fantasy, it's kind of a blending of both. It seems like a grimdark fantasy, but it is not quite grimdark. There is a beacon shining in the distance, keeping that hope alive, and the vagrant thrives on that shining light in the distance. My name is Wildstag, and thank you for tuning in to another used book rant.